They say trust doesn't break all at once. It bends, thins, and frays until one day it snaps with no warning. That morning, I didn't think I was pulling on a frayed thread. I thought I was just doing a favor. Melissa had left a message asking me to grab a package from her car before noon. Said she forgot to bring it in and needed to return it that afternoon. She was always juggling 10 things at once, so this wasn't unusual. Honestly, I didn't think twice. I walked out to the driveway, keys in hand, still half juggling my coffee, and popped open the trunk. It wasn't full. Just the usual stuff, a blanket, an emergency kit, a few tote bags. But near the back, under a folded jacket, there was something that didn't belong. A white paper bag. Thick, upscale, printed with gold lettering I didn't immediately recognize. When I lifted it out, it crinkled in that high-end way, too smooth to be grocery store material. I looked at the front, Le Chain. My stomach dropped a little. That was the fancy French place downtown in Madison. The one we'd always talked about going to for an anniversary or big occasion but never actually did. I opened it. Inside were 2 folded tasting menus dated last night. 6 courses each. Personalized. Beside them was a valet ticket from the Mirador Hotel, the boutique one a few blocks down from the restaurant, the kind that has dim lighting, in-room massages, and $400 robes. I turned one of the receipts over, scanning for a name. The reservation was under T.L. Someone I'd never heard of. But then I saw the credit card number printed at the bottom. Last 4 digits. 1612. Melissa's card. I'd know it anywhere. I'm the one who set up our banking alerts. I'm the one who manages our budget. That number wasn't just familiar, it was etched into memory from years of checking balances, booking hotels, covering holidays. There was no mistake. I stood there in the garage for maybe 10 seconds. Long enough to feel my heartbeat shift. Long enough for my mind to try, desperately, to come up with a version of this that made sense. A work event? A client dinner? Maybe she lent the card to someone? But who borrows someone's card for a $400 dinner and valet at a hotel? I brought the bag inside, set it gently on the kitchen counter. I didn't tear into it. I didn't call her. I didn't even text. I just sat at the kitchen table, the menu open in front of me, reading dishes with names I couldn't pronounce. The kind of food you eat with someone you want to impress. Someone you want to savor. Someone you don't lie to. At 6:43 p.m. She walked through the front door. Melissa's routine was flawless. Same tone, same movements. She came in, keys in one hand, her canvas work bag in the other, still wearing her navy pencil skirt and heels. Traffic was ridiculous, she said, brushing her hair back with one hand and leaning over to kiss my cheek. Her lipstick didn't quite touch skin. I swear every road in Madison is under construction right now. She set her bag down by the door like she always did, slipped off her heels, unbuttoned her blazer, said something about back-to-back meetings. Then her eyes landed on the white bag on the counter. It was subtle, just a pause, maybe a quarter second of hesitation. Her hand, reaching for a glass, stopped just before the cabinet. Her eyes flicked from the bag to me, then back again. "Oh," she said, lightly, too lightly. "Where'd you find that?" I said nothing. I just looked at her. I wanted to see what version of the story she'd pick. "That's not mine," she added quickly, smiling like she was amused. "I think I gave Jennifer a ride the other day. She must have left it in the back. I didn't even notice." She stepped over, lifted the bag casually, like it was an old receipt or dry cleaning tag. I said, "It was under your jacket in the trunk." She blinked. "Was it?" Quick shrug. "We must have just tossed stuff back there after yoga. It's not mine, though. I don't even know what that place is." She peered into the bag as if seeing it for the first time. "Looks fancy. You don't know Luchain?" She smiled again. "Is that what it's called? Sounds pretentious." I watched her closely. There was no panic in her eyes. No guilt. If anything, there was a quiet edge to her voice, like she was one step ahead, calculating. I said, "The card on the receipt is yours." That froze her for just a beat longer. Then she laughed. Not nervously, confidently. "Are you serious? Jason, we have like 4 cards between us." I've lent mine out before when someone forgot theirs. Probably gave it to Jennifer or Cassie. Or maybe it was a business thing. God, I don't even remember. Her voice had taken on that tone she used when talking to customer service. Calm but commanding, making you feel like you were the one who misunderstood something simple. Then she looked at me, right at me, and asked, "Why are you making this into a thing?" There it was. The deflection. I hadn't accused her. I hadn't said a word about cheating. I hadn't even implied anything. But she saw it. She knew what I was thinking, and instead of denying it directly, she reached for a different tool in her box, doubt. "You don't trust me?" The words floated in the air like smoke. They weren't shouted. They weren't defensive. They were cool, sharp, and wrapped in just enough emotion to make me feel like I had crossed a line. She stepped toward the table, reached for her phone, tapped the screen. "Dead," she said, holding it up. "Of course. I was going to show you something, but whatever." Then she sat down, casually crossing her legs, like we were having a normal conversation. "Jason," she said, her voice softening. "We've been off lately. I've noticed it too. You seem tired all the time. Distant. If you're feeling anxious or insecure, I want to talk about it. But I need you to trust me. I'm not out doing anything shady. You know me better than that." I stared at her, trying to connect this version of her to the one I thought I married. The Melissa who used to forget her keys twice a week, who cried at bad movies, who once drove 30 minutes out of her way just to get me a stupid cheesecake I mention offhand. But this woman sitting across from me? She wasn't scrambling. She was in control. This wasn't panic. This wasn't a slip. It was strategy. And worst of all, she was good at it. I didn't say much that night. I nodded. I let it go. Not because I believed her, but because I needed to see what else would unravel if I stayed quiet. That night in bed, she rolled over and fell asleep within minutes. Her breathing even, her face serene. Meanwhile, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the rhythm of her breath and wondering if any of it, had ever been real. Sleep didn't visit me that night. Not really. I laid there next to her, eyes open in the dark, replaying every moment of the day like a security feed. The paper bag, her tone, the practiced calm in her voice, the way she handled it all like she'd done it before. It wasn't just the lie, it was the ease of it. The way she took control of the narrative, twisted it, handed it back to me like I was the unstable one. The precision of it unnerved me. I'd always known Melissa was smart, sharp in meetings, quick to think on her feet. But this wasn't intelligence. This was rehearsal. And once you suspect someone's lying, your memory becomes a crime scene. Every small thing you dismissed before suddenly feels weighted, meaningful. I started seeing it all. Like how she stopped inviting me to things. Girls' nights, she said. Spa weekends. Work mixers that were just the team. First, I believed her. Everyone needs space. But then there was the silence. Her phone never buzzed anymore. Not when I was around. It used to go off constantly. Group chats with her sisters, work Slack, fitness app notifications. But lately, it sat screen down, silent, like it didn't exist unless she was alone. And then there were the passwords. Changed. Again. I remembered the first time I noticed it, when I grabbed her iPad to check the weather before a trip and found myself locked out. "Oh, weird," she'd said with a shrug. "Must have updated automatically." But that didn't track. Melissa didn't forget passwords. She stored them, repeated them aloud as she typed, took mental snaps *TS. She didn't accidentally shut me out. The business trips became more frequent, too. Conferences in cities she never cared about. Rooms with no windows on the expense receipts. Once, she left for Chicago and came back 2 days later saying the seminar was exhausting, but I never saw proof. No swag bags, no photos, no lanyards. Just a $600 hotel receipt and a look that dared me to ask questions. And then there were the new routines. Sudden interest in early morning yoga, though she never liked mornings. New brands in the bathroom. Perfume with a muskier base. Lip colors she hadn't worn in years. When I kissed her cheek, she smelled different. Not bad, just not hers. Her body language had shifted too. Subtle stuff. She stopped sitting next to me on the couch. We used to curl up together with bad TV, our knees touching, her toes cold against my calf. Now she took the far cushion and kept her feet tucked in. At night, she started sleeping in camisoles instead of her usual oversized tees. She said it was because of the heat, but I knew better. There was space between us now, physical, emotional, intentional. One night, a few weeks back, I'd walked into the room to grab my charger and found her speaking in a hushed voice on the phone. She was curled up in the corner of the bed, legs tucked, laughing. Not the kind of laugh she gave me. The quiet one, breathy and amused, but something more alive. When she saw me, her expression faltered for half a second. Then she ended the call quickly and said it was her sister. But Melissa never whispered with her sister. That memory haunted me now. There were so many things I'd ignored. The receipts that vanished from the trash. The lipstick stains on the inside rim of glasses that never made it into the dishwasher. The way she started double-washing certain items of clothing. I told myself it was paranoia, that I was tired, stressed. But deep down, something in me knew. These weren't isolated moments. These were patterns. And patterns never lie. I started watching her more closely. I didn't want to. I didn't want to become that person, the one checking call logs, memorizing where shoes were left, timing grocery runs. But the longer I stayed quiet, the more obvious it became. Melissa wasn't hiding from me. She just didn't care if I noticed. She moved through our home with the ease of someone certain she wouldn't be caught. That stung more than anything. Not the lie, not even the betrayal, but the certainty. The fact that she believed I'd never piece it together. That she was so confident in her performance, she didn't even bother to cover the seams. One night, she came home late from drinks with coworkers. She wore a fitted black dress I hadn't seen before. Too elegant for casual drinks. Too crisp to be from her usual rotation. Her makeup was fresh, her hair still curled. When I asked how the night went, she smiled, kissed my cheek and said, "You would have been bored." Then she walked upstairs, humming as she peeled off her heels. She didn't ask how my day was. She hadn't asked in weeks. That was the night I started writing things down. I opened a blank document on my laptop and created a log. Not for confrontation, but for clarity. I needed to see it, to track it, to know I wasn't imagining this unraveling. Every odd text, every missing hour, every girl's night that ended with smudged lipstick and quiet showers. I built a timeline, and the more I filled it in, the clearer the picture became. She was disappearing in plain sight. Even our arguments changed. Melissa had always been fiery, passionate, quick to speak her mind. Now, when tension rose, she responded with practiced detachment. Like she was reading from a script. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She responded with calm indifference. Arms crossed, head tilted. Like she was analyzing me, not talking to me. And she always redirected. If I asked about her mood, she brought up mine. If I questioned her schedule, she reminded me how busy I'd been lately. If I said I missed her, she implied I was being needy. Her words were sharp, but her tone was sweet. I never knew if I was being loved or dissected. She had become a master of small, deflating comments. "You're too sensitive. You always jump to conclusions. Maybe you just need a hobby." Each one landed like a pinprick. Not enough to bleed, but enough to bruise. It wasn't just what she said. It was how little she said. Conversations that used to stretch long into the night were now reduced to logistical exchanges. Groceries, deadlines. "Did you pay the water bill? Can you grab oat milk?" The int asterisk mate was gone, replaced by function. I stopped trying to fix it. I started listening instead, watching, documenting, and I stopped pretending I didn't know. One night, she fell asleep before me. Back turned, arms folded tight. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the silence between us. I reached out, not to touch her, but to feel the space she had left. Cold sheets, no movement, and I realized something. I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I already had it. Not in photos, not in texts, But in her absence, Melissa had been leaving me for months, just in pieces. A glance here, a lie there, a dozen small betrayals disguised as routine. And now that I'd seen the full pattern, I knew it would only continue. I didn't need to ask. I didn't need to beg. I needed to act. But not with anger. Not with confrontation. With something colder. Cleaner. I turned back to the ceiling, exhaled slowly, and started planning. I waited 3 more days. Long enough to give her space to make a mistake. Long enough to observe, without interference, if her lies would deepen or simply recycle. By then, her patterns had a rhythm I could follow in my sleep. She'd beg *n leaving earlier than usual. Makeup always perfect. Perfume always noticeable. She started changing shoes before getting in the car, carrying her heels like a model leaving a shoot. One morning, I watched her from the upstairs window as she leaned into her side mirror to check her lipstick, then drove off with a look of satisfaction I hadn't seen in years. She wasn't tired. She wasn't burdened. She was thriving. That morning, I decided I wouldn't leave for work. I texted my supervisor and said I'd be out sick. He didn't ask questions. I rarely took days off. I moved my car down the street so Melissa wouldn't notice it still in the drive. Left the house through the side door. Waited until her car turned the corner. Then quietly walked back in. Inside, everything was as she left it. Mug on the counter. A pair of workout leggings tossed on the dining chair. Her phone charger still warm. I didn't touch anything. I didn't go through drawers. That wasn't the point. I needed to know, not think, not suspect, but know. I made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. Waited. At 9:17 a.m. Her location hadn't updated on Find My. The app still showed Madison Financial Tower, the downtown office where she said she had her regular Friday meeting. But she hadn't gone that way. I'd watched her car head in the opposite direction. She was lying again. By 9:41, I knew what I was going to do. I changed into quiet clothes. Nothing loud, nothing to me. Grabbed a hoodie and some plain sneakers. The kind of outfit I wouldn't be noticed in. I backed out of the driveway in our second car, circled 2 blocks, and parked half a street away. I waited. I didn't know what I'd see. I just knew I had to see something. 10:08, her car appeared. She turned into our neighborhood. Too early for someone returning from a meeting. I ducked low in my seat, barely breathing. She didn't notice me. Melissa pulled into the driveway, stepped out wearing a fitted trench coat, and opened the trunk. She pulled out a black duffel bag, the kind we used to take on weekend trips, and walked quickly up the path. She didn't look around, didn't pause. 5 minutes later, she emerged again. Same coat, hair pulled into a bun, but now she had on heels. She paused at the front door, checking her phone. Then a second car pulled up. I recognized it. Sleek, charcoal-colored, too polished for our part of town. He got out casually, tall, clean-shaven, sunglasses even in the shade. He didn't look nervous. He looked familiar. Not to me personally, but in that general way, the kind of man who walks through a crowd with confidence because he's done it 1,000 times and never needed to apologize. Melissa greeted him with a kiss. Light, practiced, not shy. He smiled and followed her inside. They didn't rush. They disappeared behind the door like they lived here. Like this was a routine. I stayed in the car for a while. My breath came slowly. My hands didn't shake. I'd been rehearsing this moment too long for adrenaline. I waited 20 minutes. That was enough time. More than enough. Then I got out. I didn't slam the door. Didn't storm up the steps. I walked softly through the grass, heart steady, phone in hand. The front door was slightly ajar. Not enough to open, but not fully latched either. That was her habit, never closing it completely when she thought I was gone for the day. The stairs creaked. I stepped carefully. From the hallway, I could hear music playing softly. Some indie folk playlist she liked. Her scent floated faintly in the air. Roses, sandalwood, something expensive. The bedroom door was cracked, and I saw them. She stood near the bed, barefoot, wrapped in a short robe, her hair down now. Her hand traced the collar of his shirt as he kissed her neck. His blazer was tossed over the chair, his shirt unbuttoned halfway. They were speaking in low voices, nothing urgent. Just quiet laughter, soft touches, like they were stealing time from the world and savoring it. The sight didn't surprise me, confirmed everything I already knew. I didn't step inside. I pulled out my phone, took one picture, silent shutter. I framed it carefully, not invasive, just enough to be clear, to make it undeniable. Then I turned, walked down the stairs, and left the house. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel heartbreak. What I felt was clarity. When I reached the car, I sat for a while, staring at the dashboard. The image on my phone glowed faintly. I stared at it, but not with pain, with calculation. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was factual. I drove to a nearby hotel, not the kind with room service, just a clean, quiet place where no one asks questions. I found a cafe near the lobby, sat by the window, and opened my laptop. I created a new drive, password protected, transferred the image, labeled it with time, date, location. That photo wasn't for revenge. It wasn't even for proof. It was for me, to remind myself that I hadn't imagined this. At 1:34 p.m. Melissa texted me, "How's your day going?" Long one for me, meeting still going. I stared at the message. She was still lying. Even now, I didn't respond. Instead, I created a second folder, redundancy, copied the file there, stored it on a flash drive. When I left the cafe, I bought a burner phone. Nothing fancy, no contacts. That evening, she returned home with her usual rhythm. Hair brushed, lip color refreshed, phone in hand. She smiled, dropped her keys in the bowl, kissed my cheek. "I'm starving," she said. Meetings were non-stop. She moved around the kitchen like always, chopping vegetables, asking about my day. I gave her short answers. Nothing suspicious, nothing different. I nodded when I had to, laughed once. Let her tell me about office politics she probably hadn't witnessed. And she didn't flinch. Not once. Not when I looked at her too long. Not when I asked where her coat was. Not even when I said, "You smell different today." "Oh?" she said with a smile. "New shampoo. You like it?" I nodded. She smiled again, kissed my cheek. That night she fell asleep easily, curled on her side, back facing me. Like always, I laid beside her, wide awake. But this time I didn't feel powerless. I had confirmation. I had evidence. I had the beginning of something that looked a lot like freedom. The photo was tucked safely away. And tomorrow I'd start preparing. The next morning she made pancakes. Blueberry, my favorite. Said it was just because. Smiled as she poured my coffee and kissed the top of my head like we were living in some sweet domestic memory. She wore my hoodie too. The old one from college she never used to like because it was too baggy. Now she wore it like it meant something, like it could cover what she'd done. I sat at the table and thanked her. Quietly, told her the pancakes were perfect. She smiled like she'd won a prize. But what she didn't know was that while she flipped flapjacks and hummed some upbeat tune, I was already dismantling the life we shared. One password, one file, one folder at a time. This wasn't a decision I'd made in a fit of rage. This was math now. Strategy. What she'd done had nothing to do with love and everything to do with confidence. She believed she could hide something like that from me and still ask if I wanted more syrup. She had mistaken my silence for softness. And I was about to show her how wrong she was. That morning, while she showered, I backed up our entire shared photo cloud. 10 years of memories downloaded into a secure drive, labeled and archived. Not because I wanted to keep them, but because I didn't want her to erase history. She had a habit of deleting anything that didn't serve her narrative. I wasn't going to let her rewrite this story. Next, I accessed our home network and printed the login report from her laptop. Times, dates, locations. Small details but telling. She'd logged into a private guest Wi-Fi at the Mirador Hotel the morning after she claimed to be in a budget meeting. Another lie. Another thread added to the web she thought I couldn't see. I didn't confront her. I copied the logs. Uploaded them to my redundancy drive. Stored the flash drive in the drawer of my workshop in the garage. Tucked inside a small wooden box I'd built her 3 years ago for our anniversary. The same box where she'd once kept love notes, ticket stubs, and photos. That box now held a different kind of memory. While she continued living her day-to-day, I watched her with a new clarity. She had no idea I was already gone. At lunch, she texted me from work. "Can we do date night Friday? Just us?" She even added a little heart emoji at the end. That would have made me smile once. Now it looked like punctuation to a script she'd rehearsed with someone else first. I responded, "Sounds great. Can't wait." I was polite. I was predictable. I was invisible in the best possible way. That evening, while she went for a long run, I went through our shared Google Calendar. Turns out she had created a second account. I found the email listed as a recovery backup for our Netflix. Clever. Subtle. She probably thought I wouldn't notice. Most people wouldn't. But I wasn't most people anymore. When she returned, face flushed, cheeks rosy, workout clothes pristine, I asked how far she'd gone. She said 5 miles. Then kissed me with breath that didn't even hint of exertion. No sweat. No towel. She walked straight to the bathroom and turned on the shower without turning around. I added that to the log. That night, I accessed her phone while she slept. Her passcode had changed 3 times in the past 2 weeks, but I'd figured out the pattern. Our anniversary date reversed. A subtle shift she assumed would be clever enough to keep me out. I was in within 30 seconds. Messages to someone named T.L. flooded the screen. No emojis. No names. Just clean, clipped language. No photos. No calls. Everything deleted after 2 days. Except what had been backed up to the cloud, she'd forgotten to unlink from her iPad last year. That's where I found everything. Restaurant reservations. Hotel confirmations. A recurring calendar invite labeled simply, Eucalyptus. Their private code. She was meticulous. I'll give her that. But she was arrogant. She left digital fingerprints everywhere. She believed that deception was only a risk if someone was actively looking. And now I was looking. Over the next 2 days, I didn't sleep much. Instead, I built a digital archive, a folder structure. I labeled everything with quiet precision. Folder 1. Timeline daily breakdowns of events, messages, meetings, receipts. Folder 2. *TS, conversations, location data, emails. Folder 3. Photos, the picture I took in the bedroom. Metadata intact. Folder 4. Financial statements showing unusual withdrawals, booking charges, hotel stays. Folder 5. Voice, audio clips from conversations I recorded after installing a mic near the kitchen. Not illegal in our state. Not even unethical given the circumstances. I didn't know yet what I'd do with it all. But I knew I needed it. Because if there's one thing people like Melissa fear more than being caught, it's being outmaneuvered. And I was no longer playing defense. On Wednesday, I called a lawyer. Not because I was ready to file. Not yet. But because I wanted to understand the terrain before I stepped onto it. The woman I spoke to was sharp, direct, and when I described the situation, she didn't blink. "You're smart to gather documentation," she said. "If she's been using joint resources to facilitate the affair, that matters. Start compiling financials if you haven't already." I had. She continued, "You'll also want to watch how she behaves once she senses something's changed. They usually don't spiral, they calculate. But once they realize you've stopped reacting emotionally, that's when they lose control." I thanked her. She told me to call back when I was ready. I would be. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware store. Picked up a small safe, just large enough to hold documents, drives, and a few personal items. Something fireproof, tamper-resistant. I placed it in the workshop beneath my tool bench. Nothing unusual. Just another lockbox in a sea of labeled drawers. She wouldn't notice. She rarely stepped foot in the garage. Said it smelled too much like wood and oil. That night, I brought the safe to life. I loaded it carefully. Drove to a friend's house across town and asked to store a duplicate drive in his lockbox. Just in case. Told him it was work stuff. He didn't ask questions. Just nodded, handed me a beer, and asked if I wanted to talk about whatever it was. I said I would. Someday. Melissa called while I was there. I let it ring once, then answered. Hey, I said. Where are you? Had to drop something off for work. Just now leaving. Okay, she said. Her voice was light. I miss you. I'll be home soon. When I walked in later, she was wearing lingerie. The soft, pale kind she hadn't touched in over a year. She smiled, posed slightly, and said, Thought I'd surprise you. She stepped closer, arms wrapping around me. Her breath smelled like mint and wine. I let her, not because I wanted to, but because it confirmed something else. She had started to sense it. The shift, my detachment, the subtle difference in how I looked at her. She was trying to reclaim control. That night, I lay in bed next to her, eyes open, listening to the sound of her breathing slow into sleep. She thought she was ahead of me. She had no idea. By morning, she'd be back to her rhythm. Her smiles, her stories, her half-truths. And I'd keep nodding, keep helping her pack lunches, keep asking if she needed anything from the store. But beneath every chore, every word, every carefully balanced moment, I was building an exit with surgical precision. She was dancing on a rug I'd already begged *N to pull, and soon she'd feel it shift. The fall didn't start with a crash. No breaking glass, no screaming, no tell-all confession. It started quietly, like a string pulled loose behind a curtain, unraveling fabric she didn't even realize was beginning to sag. It began on a Thursday. Melissa left the house that morning wearing a blazer I hadn't seen before. Charcoal gray, slim cut, new. She said she had a presentation with some cross-regional clients. She smiled like it was something important, like she was proud. I told her she looked incredible. She kissed me and said, Wish me luck. I wished her luck. At 10:12 a.m., the first domino fell. She texted me from the office line. Crazy morning. Already had one client reschedule. Going to be a long day. She even sent a thumbs-up emoji. That little detail felt absurd in hindsight, because at 10:16 her email account at work locked her out. I knew this because I'd set it in motion. Days earlier, I had created an anonymous tip using her company's whistleblower portal. Encrypted, time-delayed, masked IP. No trace. I included flagged calendar entries, metadata from her travel receipts, and *TS of several client meeting times that didn't align with her expense claims. Some listed hotel charges. Others included out-of-region restaurant visits. All of it carefully stitched into a timeline, annotated, color-coded, and delivered in a zipped report titled simply, Use of Company Time and Funds, Flagged Pattern. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't cruel. It was surgical. By noon, she called me. Hey, she said, her voice slightly higher than usual. My work email is acting up. Do you mind checking the router logs when you get home? Maybe it's our connection. I told her I would. That afternoon, she texted me twice, then stopped. By 4 p.m. Her LinkedIn page was still public, but her company profile had been taken offline. I refreshed it just to be sure. No photo, no title, just a blank header. That night she came home early. No blazer, no smile, just a tangle of keys and the sound of her heels crossing the hardwood with less certainty than usual. She kissed me, but her lips barely brushed my cheek. How was your day? She asked. I said, uneventful. Yours? She hesitated. Some weird IT issue today. Our servers were all over the place. I think someone might have triggered a spam filter or something. Everyone's on edge. Strange, I said. Hope it clears up soon. She gave me a tight smile. Not confident, not quite afraid, just off. She poured herself a glass of wine and didn't finish it. The next morning, it escalated. 3 of her company's board members received printed packages via overnight courier. I made sure each envelope included a cover page explaining the nature of the enclosed material, misuse of time, falsified expenses, and non-disclosed third-party interactions during scheduled work travel. No threats, no demands, just data. Undeniable. She left that morning in a rush, saying she had a call with HR at 9. She didn't take her coffee to go, didn't grab breakfast. She barely said goodbye. By 11:15, I received a text from her that simply read, "Today's a mess. I'll explain later." She didn't explain. By the time she came home, her assistant had quit. Melissa walked through the door like someone balancing a tray of glasses. Perfect posture, measured steps, too careful. She smiled, but her eyes darted toward mine, searching. "Long day?" I asked. "The worst," she said. I didn't push. That weekend, she cooked dinner. From scratch. Poured 2 glasses of wine. Set the table with candles we hadn't used in months. She even played jazz through the speakers' soft, background ambience. Something we used to do during better years. She wore a navy dress. One I bought her for a party 2 anniversaries ago. It still fit perfectly. She still looked radiant. But I didn't see her the same way anymore. Not because she wasn't beautiful, but because I could finally see behind the mask. She smiled across the table. "I've missed this." I smiled back. "Yeah, me too." She reached out, took my hand. "Things have been hectic, but I think it's all going to be okay." I nodded, but I didn't squeeze her hand back. Later that evening, she curled up beside me on the couch, her head on my shoulder. We watched something forgettable on TV. I didn't pay attention. My mind was on the next file upload. The next day, she tried logging into one of our joint accounts. Declined. Tried again. Declined. She called the bank. I'd already removed her access. She came to me, confused. Not angry, just puzzled. "Hey," she said cautiously, "did the bank app glitch for you?"